So, Eric, yesterday, or earlier in the week, I had a friend say to me about things happening in the world. He said, it seems like the world is on fire. And in many ways, it does seem like the world is on fire. But, today, I know we're going to talk about three words that have I think, the potential to reshape the world that we live in. And I don't think that's being overly optimistic. But what if the world we really long for, all of us together, is one that's marked by a sense of dignity, healing, and hope? What if those three words could help us build a world like that? These words are love, justice, and power.
Yes.
And together we're going to talk today about those words. As you well know, these are words that we often hear, right?
Yes.
They're chanted in the protests. We preach them from the pulpit, and we post them across timelines. But I wonder sometimes, do we really understand these words and the impact that they can have on our life together? Love is dismissed as soft. Justice is often reduced to slogans, and power is often, worshipped by those who want something heavy-handed. But what if those three words, love, justice, and power, what if those aren't opposing forces? What if they were meant to work together to shape our leadership and transform our culture and reveal something sacred about how we live and lead and relate to one another? I mean, that's where we are. So this is Convergence. And I'm glad you've joined us today. I'm here with my friend, Dr. Eric Betts. And together we are going to talk together about where religion, leadership, and culture merge. And today, of course, we're at the intersection of love, justice, and power, and how to rightly understand them, and hopefully how to implement them in our life. I'm Dr. Robbie White, and together we offer this podcast, Convergence, and it's part of the Coleman Center here at Athens State University, a part of the Religious Studies program, and we're glad you've joined us. So you have a sense of where we're going today. And I'm excited about this particular podcast, Eric.
Yes, absolutely. As you stated, those three concepts of love, power, and justice, I'm reminded of German-American theologian Paul Tillich,
right.
Who wrote an entire book entitled Love, Power, and Justice. And
right.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. studied and corresponded with Paul Tillich during the time of the Civil Rights Movement. And Cornel West and Michael Eric Dyson, if you read their writings, you listen to their speeches, they all incorporate those three concepts of love, power, and justice.
Yes.
Correcting the notion that love is sentimentality,
right?
That love is simply centered around emotions and feelings. I remember listening to one of the responses of Dr. King, where he said that I can't make you. Just referring to the Civil Rights Act, I can't force you to love me on a sentimental level, but I can't stop you from lynching me. Mm. So love, as you were stating earlier, is reflected in the work of justice.
Yes.
So love, in that sense, becomes a power.
That's right.
And we see that those who are from the Christian tradition understand, as we're approaching Good Friday, that the cross is a symbol that love is indeed a power, because greater love, I could insert in there, greater power
Right.
have no man than this, than to lay down his life for a friend. And the cross is a work of justice.
That's right.
It is a response to injustice as well. So we see love being not just, as Dr. King says, a weak and a anemic force, but rather, building off of Paul Tillich, it is the drive to reunion,
Right.
because we were created to live together in harmony.
Right.
And love is that desire to do so.
That's so true.
Yes.
I agree. You know, the world, and you well know this, we're living in a time where there's so much division and distrust and really a deep need, people who are in need of help. And yet, you know, in spite of that reality, here we are talking about love and justice and power and the place where they converge, because we do believe that they can help repair a broken world. They can help repair the broken and help us reimagine what's possible. And I think that's what's missing often in our time is we are so consumed by the latest news and what's happening around us, and that is important. But we take very little time to think about the power of creativity and the power of reimagining, that it doesn't have to be this way, that things can be better, and together we can do this. And if we didn't believe that, we wouldn't be sitting here, right? We wouldn't be having this conversation. And so you're right. Love is so much more than an emotion. We've reduced that. It's a moral commitment, right?
It is. And that reminds me of, you talk about love, power, and justice. Jesus said that if you say you love me, how can you say that you love God,
Right.
who you haven't seen,
Right.
and hate your neighbor
Oh, exactly.
that you have seen? Well, what are the ways to hate?
Right.
What are the ways that hate are manifested in our society? Because, see, that there are many people think that if they're nice,
Right.
they're not being hateful. If they're nice, that's the same thing as being anti-racist.
Right.
But when you look at hatred is anything that is not centered in love.
Right.
In other words, you can be nice and implement harmful or engage in or support or remain silent when you see harmful actions taking place.
Well, niceness can be a cloak of apathy.
Yes.
Just don't get involved.
Yes.
You know, if you see a need, turn the other way, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And love is it's a choice. It's a discipline. Real love shows up in how we treat the vulnerable, how we speak across the divide, and how we hold space for those who are hurting. It's all of those things and more. Love is, Dr. Cornel West, you mentioned, he once said, justice is what love looks like in public.
Yes.
So here's the thing. Love isn't soft. It isn't weak. I know a lot of people who have this, they would never say it out loud, but they have this idea that somehow you've got to use strong-arm tactics to affect change in the world. No, you look at history, love lasts longer, is more effective. It's the thing that we're called to do, right? People of faith. Love is strong and resilient, and it's willing to risk for the sake of others.
Yes.
That's what love looks like. And so, love without justice is just a sentiment.
Yes. And Jesus embodied that.
Exactly.
He was the embodiment of love And the love that he demonstrated was reflected
Yeah, right.
in how he both related to the vulnerable, those who were blind, those who were crippled, those who were hungry, those who were isolated due to leprosy.
Right.
And that love was also demonstrated in how he was willing to break cultural norms
Right.
to include others.
Yeah.
And it was manifested through how he was willing to stand up against power
Yes.
at the risk of his own life. And that love that Jesus showed, he was able to conquer the world through that love.
Exactly.
We are still talking about this man Jesus today.
Well, look at the cross, the symbol that you
Yes.
mentioned a moment ago.
Yes.
And the cross can be seen in many different ways, but one of the ways too is it can be seen in the form of resistance. Jesus opposing systems of oppression.
Yes.
It can be seen as a symbol of reconciliation. But at the heart of all of that is love.
Yes.
I mean, that's the amazing transformative act that Jesus performed with the cross, that he went to the cross, and now we talk about the cross in language of love,
Yes.
as opposed to cruelty and hate and a kind of power that the empire wielded that created fear. So, I think love is something that you can't talk about change without talking about, not transformative change, without talking about the power of love. And that brings me to say also that love without power is really passive. And they go together. I think these three things go together, Eric.
Yes. And look at Jesus once again as the model for this. We in the Christian tradition we studied the concept of the incarnation.
Right.
How did Jesus use his power?
Right.
He humbled himself and became obedient even to the death of the cross. So when Jesus worked his miracles, he was exercising his power
Right.
as a means to show love. And so the miracles that Jesus performed were not for himself,
No.
but for those who couldn't help themselves.
That's right.
And so if we bring that into today's society, how are the powerful using their power today?
You're right.
Is it being used for self-interest,
Right.
or is it being used to help the blind to see, metaphorically speaking, the lame to walk, the dumb to talk?
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Especially, and I know there'll be folks who are listening that aren't necessarily part of any faith community, and we certainly are glad for that. We're glad for an audience,
Yes.
a wide audience. But the other side of that, many people are a part of faith community. And it seems to me that the question we ought to be asking, even of our own lives, and is this coming from a place of love and respect? My words, my actions, what I'm doing with my life, is this a place of love and respect, or is this coming out of a sense of ego, a sense of even prejudice or hatred? And I think all of that matters. And when you mention Jesus, he said to his disciples, the rulers of the Gentiles love to lord it over you. But it will not be so. It's not so in the kingdom. Jesus taught a form of servant leadership that's just not optional. And in a minute, I hope we can pick that back up. I want to talk about it in a minute because I think it has implications, especially for those who lead inside faith communities. I want to come back to that. But just as you mentioned about love is not weak, justice is not always reduced just to fairness either. It's about healing and bringing reconciliation.
Yes. Just looking at that word justice, and if we were to use that, juxtapose the word justice with how those who manipulate power
Right.
to dehumanize others, just look at how many of those in the Christian tradition, we keep coming back to the Christian tradition, but Dr. King included all traditions in this concept.
That's right.
In the Christian tradition, there is the concept of grace.
Right.
And however, when it comes to many Christians, when they go from talking about grace on Sunday morning
Right.
to how they view society, there's a contradiction.
Yeah.
Because if they break the law, if somebody breaks the law, throw them not only in jail, but throw them under the jail.
Right.
If somebody violates a law, if it's nonviolent, throw them not only in jail, but throw them under the jail.
Right.
If someone simply, violates, shall we say, a law or some order, then we should prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. So that's their view of justice.
Right.
Many Christians. So, but in church, they say that Jesus forgives, Jesus is loving,
Right.
Jesus wants people to be redeemed, he wants people to be restored, but there's a contradiction
Yes.
when it comes to society. So that's the view, that is a view of justice that goes against the love that Jesus represented and many other traditions represented as well.
That's exactly right,
Yes.
Eric. And the thing is, that's the cultural influence. And that's true not only in how we see love, but justice and power.
Yes.
How we view power is often shaped more by the culture than by our own tradition, by our own faith tradition.
Yes.
And we,
Yes, you mentioned that. I was just thinking about how in our society today, justice from the perspective of those who are at the top is all about preserving the status quo.
that's right.
Whatever preserves status quo, that's justice. Even oftentimes, in my view, even policing is oftentimes directed towards keeping spaces safe
Right.
for those who are in power,
Yes.
keeping out those quote-unquote criminal elements out of our spaces. And sometimes people are stereotyped
That's right.
and are caught up in that system and that is abused. But
think-
as long as it's keeping that segment of society safe, then everything is all right. But what about justice when those who are in power use their power to hurt those who can't speak for themselves? We
Right.
often find that those who are in power or who are in a dominant place, a more powerful position, won't speak out on those individuals' behalf as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
What do you think of this statement? Justice is how love shows up to challenge broken systems and build something better. It cares about the oppressed and those who are often categorized in ways, as you mentioned. This often happens. Justice isn't vengeance; it's restoration.
Yes, yes.
And I think we confuse that in the culture itself, and I think that there's a lot of work to be done in this area. But yeah, man, justice without love is harsh. There's no restorative grace to it at all.
Yes, yes.
And
yes.
So all the faith traditions, as you mentioned, all of them speak to justice. It's not a partisan idea. It's a calling, if you will. The prophetic tradition, as you well know, in the prophetic tradition, justice is the demand of the people. It's about the cry of the unheard and the oppressed. It's about finding and holding those who are in power, at least in the position. It's speaking truth to power. And it's doing that, in the words of Jesus, out of love. But it's out of love for those who don't have a voice in that system. And we don't often think of justice in that way.
Yes, yes. When you were speaking just a moment ago, I thought about Dr. King's sermon that he wanted to be played at his funeral, which was the drum major
Right.
instinct. And I think that sermon, the drum major instinct, encapsulates this whole idea of love, power, and justice, because he says that instinctively,
Yes.
doesn't matter what tradition you come from, what ethnic origin you might be, there's something innate
Right.
in humanity that desires to be first,
Right.
that desires to be the most powerful person in the room, to lead the parade. And he's during this time, when he spoke those words, this was during the beginning of the nuclear arms race,
Right.
where he saw the possibility that things could get out of hand with this mindset of I must be first. So he talked about nationalism. He talked about, of course, we know the three evils: militarism, corporate greed, and racism as the three evils. So we have power on that side. I must be first, and those three evils: racism, corporate greed, and militarism, represent power without love and without justice. And then he said that then there is the other side of that, which embraces in a holistic way and in a healing way and in a way that is true to how we were created, love, power, and justice, using love, power, and justice to serve others. He referred to Jesus' statement that, when the mother of the sons of Zebedee said that, can my son sit on the right hand or on the left hand?
Right.
And Jesus says, if you're going to really be great, be a servant.
That's right.
So when power is exercised for the service of others, when it is combined with love, and when love is lived out through the exercise of justice or advocating for justice, then we become servant-oriented.
That's right.
And he said that in this sense, everybody can be great. It doesn't have to be one nation being great,
That's right.
or one ethnic group being great, or one class of people being great. But everybody can be great because everybody can serve, and that's what makes a community great when they're willing to sacrifice for the service of others.
I so agree with
Yes.
that, Eric. I love the example from Dr. King. And you're right. I mean, that's exactly right. At the end of the day, it's about being great in service.
Yes.
Power, the word power often gets this reputation that I think when we use the word power, we are often talking about someone who, again, can be heavy-handed, insisting on their own will, as opposed to the desire to use whatever influence they might have to serve others. And we see this across the board. This is easy to, culturally, even with communities of faith, think about what is the measure of success and how success is tied to power, and how often in faith communities, it's all about the numbers. It's all about how large a community is. What about how healthy how a community might be, or how compassionate the community is? We often confuse this. We think that power has to be heavy-handed, and that's not. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's tied. When you look at it in a healthy way, in a healing way, power is tied to love and justice. Power that's tied to love and justice, well, it's about restoration. It's about bringing healing to the world, and Dr. King said, power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, right?
Yes.
So when it's shaped or guided by love and shaped by justice, it is redemptive.
Yes, yes. You've mentioned the heavy-handed view
Yeah.
of power without love and justice. In that sermon that we just mentioned with Dr. King, the drum major instinct, his concern was from a perspective of the historical continuum of how many nations of people have been led to ruin, have become wreckages
Right.
because of this self-defeating hate. He called it a self-defeating hate.
Yeah.
He went back all the way to the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Romans, the British Empire, and he talked about how this hate is self-defeating and how it is even more self-defeating in our time. He talked about the nuclear threat at that time. Now, today, we don't talk a lot about the nuclear threat, but what about the environment?
Right.
The pandemic should have taught us that how all interconnected we are.
That's right.
None of us can be great until everybody's great.
Right.
I can't be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be.
That's right.
And the survival of the planet hangs on our ability to understand that dynamic.
I so agree. I
Yes.
so agree with that.
Yes.
I think that is something that's often overlooked. And so, power is something that if you want a contemporary image, some images to contrast, and I realize this is, if it's almost Holy Week in the Christian tradition, if you want images about power that are contrasted, and I know this is going to be, I realize politically there are people on both sides of the fence. I get that, and even those of you who are listening. So I'm not trying to be offensive, but I think it's a very relevant image.
Yes.
The image of a chainsaw to celebrate the use of power in effecting a change. You take that image and you contrast that with Jesus, who uses the basin of water to wash the feet of his disciples at the Last Supper. You can't reconcile those two images. Those are two very different images of power and how they are used. One, and it doesn't have to be a chainsaw. It can be, and it's been power's been abused on both sides of the aisle politically. So, but the thing is, you can't reconcile those two images, especially people of faith.
That's
And so, when you see a leader who has both positional authority, but is able to use their authority and influence in a way that serves others, it is a beautiful thing. It is something that's transformative. I've seen that. I've seen that, even here at Athens State in leadership. I've seen people who have led. Our president, even now, I think, leads in that manner with a desire to be a servant leader. I think this matters. I think the way in which we lead is an important issue, and I think that all leadership should be used with love, a desire to see justice done, and a power that's harnessed to love and justice in ways that serves the needs of others. Now that is lasting, impactful kind of leadership, and I think it's what we're hungry for. Not just individually, I think even as a nation, we're hungry for a kind of leadership that shows that kind of the balance of love, justice, and power.
Yes.
And again, I know that can be heard in ways that it sounds partisan. I don't mean it that way, but I think I want to speak the truth here as best we can. If we're going to try to make a difference, and so
and those who are listening, if they can show grace
You show a little
in alignment with the Christian tradition.
Exactly. But the real question, it turns to each one of us, right? I mean, at the end of the day, this conversation is not just about how other people have used this. What about in our own lives? How do we implement love and justice and power in ways that lift people, that help people, that serve people? How do we do that in ways that honor our tradition and at the same time build community?
Yes.
Now, those are the questions that are, I think, meaningful and relevant for all of us.
Yes. When you were talking about the political dynamics and the different sides of the aisle, I thought about something, too, that the Democratic National Convention in 64, correct me if I'm incorrect about this, where Fannie Lou Hamer gave her famous speech and was not allowed to be seated. The Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party from Mississippi was not allowed to be seated by the Democratic Party at that time. Fannie Lou Hamer and the delegation, it made national news. In fact, President Lyndon Baines Johnson interrupted her speech to give his take on domestic affairs. But in retrospect, who is the most powerful person at that moment?
Right.
The Democratic National Convention or Fannie Lou Hamer?
Right.
Going beyond that, Lyndon Baines Johnson or Fannie Lou Hamer?
Right.
Who is the most powerful person in that moment?
Right.
Historically speaking, it would be Fannie Lou Hamer.
Right.
She is the one who stood the test of time.
Well, see, that's the thing about power that many people don't understand. You might have a position that allows you a certain amount of power.
Yes.
But if you walk into a room in an organization, it's not necessarily the person with the gavel who has the power.
Yes.
It may be someone else sitting in that audience that has the real influence.
Yes.
I learned this a long time ago in church life, but it's true in other organizations as well. So, I mean, look, here's the thing with politics, and we can close with this, but, my wife and I were in Washington, D.C. this past weekend to see my grandson. And, of course, D.C. was one of the places where a large protest happened about the kind of leadership in our time. Now, here's the thing, as you're listening. Again, I don't care what side of the aisle you are, but we all need to understand this. As much as you might think in the moment you have power or that you have majority or that whatever, that always shifts politically. It always is shifting. As many people as you think are on your side of the fence, there are just as many on the other side of the fence. This is the divided world we live in. And with Convergence, what we wanted to do is talk about love and power and justice. But here's the real work, Eric, is why don't we just tear down the fence? Why can't we agree that we are all human beings, that there's we have this commonality, and out of love and justice and power, let's use love, justice, and power as a way to not only heal the division, but to make this a better place, a better time for humanity. There are plenty of other challenges out there that face us. We could transcend this, but it was going to require, I think, all of us taking more seriously this topic.
Yes, absolutely. And the most powerful force on earth is truth.
Yeah.
I heard a preacher say a few weeks ago, I believe it was Otis Moss III, who said, the truth in the grave is more powerful than a lie on the throne.
Oh,
and I thought about that.
That's right.
And I thought about the work of Jesus. I thought about the 4 little girls in Birmingham 16th Street Church. They are more powerful in the grave than many people today that are on the throne.
Yeah.
And so
It's true.
that's just what I was thinking about as you would. This has been a beautiful discussion. I so appreciate.
I've enjoyed
engagement.
the opportunity, and
Yes.
thanks to those who've hung with us, who've listened. Week after week, we're going to try to bring relevant topics to the table, and talk together at a place where they overlap, they converge. This becomes, the work that we have together. And so, again, I appreciate you joining us. If you're doing that through YouTube or through a podcast, however you're doing that, we're glad you're with us. We hope that you'll join us again. We look forward to being here again next week and talking together again.
Yes.
Thank you, Eric, and thanks to all of you for listening.
Thank you.